Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. I know the road sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do: take my hand and join the Love and Laugh crew. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then they love and life guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And wow, have we got an interesting evening for you tonight. You know, back in October 2011, I travelled past this little town, Waterfallboven. I wrote in my travel log at the time. I travelled on from Nelspruit, reaching the small town of Waterfallboven, where a sign, Ancient Ruins, caught my eye. I turned off, having plenty of time, and arrived at a place called The Circle, where within minutes I was introduced to farmer Paul van Niekerk and author Michael Tellinger, who showed us around his small museum. His ideas are quite revolutionary, as he believes the first ancient Homo sapiens civilizations dates back 280,000 years, and was a genetically modified group, modified by a superior race who wanted their slaves to mine gold in this region. There is no question that the strange and ancient stone ruins cover large parts of the Northern Orange Free State and Eastern Transvaal. You can actually see them on Google Earth, but their origins are clearly in question. Michael estimates that there are over 1 million such structures, and that they are all associated with an advanced but ancient sound technology, which when used correctly allows you to easily levitate even heavy weights. I witnessed Michael Tellinger hitting one stone with another, yet the sound was like that of a clear bell, metallic, not the dull thud of a normal stone. It's all in the shape and design of the stones, according to Michael. Apparently, light lasers are now being joined by sound phasers, which provides the same energy force just through the use of sound. Let's have a look at Michael in his museum back in 2011 when we were talking about this very subject.
Ancient people and the ancient knowledge of the African people, they all talk about the same thing, about sound.
Now that's two stones being knocked together, but the largest stone is a bell, and this is from a civilization that dates back 280,000 years.
And if you think that this is an accidental stone shape, it's not. It's very specifically carved. I've got a few more that look like this. You know, it all depends how you hold it. Sometimes it rings beautifully if you get it right. But your fingers deaden the sound. But
Okay.
And
Wow.
now remember, the higher the frequency, the more the energy.
Yeah.
So that's why they use gigahertz, because that's extremely high energy.
What are those things that they've lifted?
That's probably pieces of polystyrene or something.
Yeah. So they're actually bouncing on the sound waves.
Yeah. And now watch carefully. As the frequency changes, subtly, it changes the spin and the movement of it. Now what? Listen. There. Did you hear that change in frequency?
Yeah.
Subtle change, and it does weird things. Listen.
But that's a...
Listen. There. Change in frequency, and it starts to spin it.
But that's a bit of polystyrene. How would you lift something 50 times?
I just told you. The higher the frequency, the higher the energy.
So the higher the energy...
Don't think logically about this.
Okay.
You're using what they taught you in physics.
Okay.
You can't do that. We've gone into another realm of knowledge here. Okay? Something that we fight against. We don't want to believe it. Because all our lives we've been told it's not possible.
So even though we feel something is heavy, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can lift anything up. What did Jesus tell us? With faith you can move mountains. What is faith? It's a frequency.
It's an energy.
It's an energy.
Yeah. Cool.
All of the ancient people and the...
Okay, that gives you a bit of the background to some of the theories that Michael believes in. And who am I to say he's wrong? I mean, there's strange things in the world, aren't they? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Michael Tellinger on so we can actually have a chat. And here we go, guys. Hi, Michael.
Scott.
How are you, mate?
Fabulous.
Excellent. I can't see you. I just see your little icon.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm just getting there. Right. Just give me 30 seconds. I just need to run, and I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Sure, not a problem. Just while Michael's getting his camera sorted, I just want to address the side chat and people watching tonight. Thank you for being with us. Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed and ring the bell for the updates. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is everything from ancient civilizations to what the heck is going on in the world today with this lockdown. So it's going to be a very broad range of subjects. Please just sit down, break open the popcorn, and relax and enjoy. Okay. I think he's back.
Right, can you see me, Scott?
I can. Before we start,
Cool.
I just want to address the side chat. Hey guys, let's drop the subject of that WhatsApp group, okay? Please. Okay, let's get back to Michael now. Michael, before we get into the ancient technologies and all that sort of stuff, please tell me a bit about yourself, your background, how you landed up in Waterfallboven, and just give us some of your story.
Okay, I grew up on the gold mines in South Africa. My father worked on the gold mines on the west strand of Johannesburg, where that whole reef runs, and there are a lot of gold mines there. And then the last few years of high school in Rustenburg, where the two biggest platinum mines in the world are. So Rustenburg is, but there are also other copper and other mines there as well, but platinum are the two big mines there. So I grew up in the mining communities. Then after high school, 1979, I went to Wits University. I studied pharmacy at the Wits Medical School. I graduated in 1983. But during the time while I was studying, I was also a musician and was involved in the music industry. I did a lot of television work and played in bands and recorded albums and released albums. I did theatre. So I was involved in the music industry on many ways, many levels, for many years. And I never thought they would end. And suddenly one day, at the age of 28, I decided to leave the music industry because there was at that stage a boycott against South African musicians. There was an international boycott. So if you were a South African musician, you couldn't really play anywhere in the world. And that was just a situation that you couldn't beat. And so I got involved in advertising and did a variety of things. I always followed my heart, followed my passion. So for that reason, I've done many things, including obviously working pharmaceutics field as well for about 4 years in either retail and manufacturing, pharmaceutics. And then eventually I decided I needed to write a book. So in 2005, 2004, I sat down and I started writing a book, which ended up being my first book, Slave Species of God, about the misunderstood history and origins of humankind. And shortly after releasing that book, that's when I met Johann Heine, who came to one of my lectures, showed me the photographs of the Stone Circle ruins from the air that lie scattered along the mountaintops in South Africa. And at that stage, no one had seen photographs of that. They were very hard to find. And they just completely blew my mind. And I couldn't believe that nobody knew about it. And from that moment, 2007, I realized that the Stone Circle ruins were calling me. And I realized that I had to get out of Johannesburg. And I moved out to Waterfallboven, where I'm talking to you from right now. So I've been here since basically late 2007, early 2008, researching the ancient ruins of Southern Africa and making all these remarkable discoveries that just somehow landed in my lap. I guess they landed in my lap because I was paying attention and giving them time and energy.
Fantastic. Well, I have to tell you that Google Earth clearly shows the stone circles all over the Eastern Transvaal and the area you're talking about. And I love Google Earth because when you zoom into an area, you can see things that you can't see from the ground. And there's one perfect example of that, and that's if you look up Pilgrims Rest and you zoom into Pilgrims Rest, And you know how there's only one street going along with Pilgrims Rest. With Google Earth, if you look at the other side of the river, you will see the old fort, the actual, not the remains, but you can actually see how the earth has been disturbed in the shape of the old fort, which was put up there back in the 1870s. And if you go to Pilgrims Rest, you won't see it. But you can go to Google Earth and you can actually see the exact spot where the old fort is. And then if you go to Pilgrims Rest, you can walk to it, and then you can actually see the old fort. So Google Earth is fantastic in that way.
Yeah, we've made many discoveries on Google Earth. It's a great tool when you're looking at archaeological sites, ancient sites, mysterious things. Google Earth is a great tool to use. And I must say I've used it quite a bit in looking at ancient ruins of southern Africa, finding some of these clusters of the ruins that you can't see while you're driving on the road.
Yeah.
And then I look them up on Google Earth, and then I go there, explore, and there they are. Just, hundreds and thousands of them.
Yeah. Now, let's start off, because we got a huge range of subjects to talk about tonight. Let's start off with some of the things that you've discovered. Tell us about Adam's calendar. What is Adam's calendar?
Well, it's exactly what it is. It's an ancient stone calendar that still works today. So it's become known as the oldest man-made working sun calendar on Earth. And hold on to your hat here, because it's around 300,000 years old.
Wow.
Okay, so this tells us that, and there are many reasons why we know it's 300,000 years old. We can go into the details if you want to, but when you mention those kind of numbers in mainstream archaeology, their brains aren't wired like that. They just can't compute it. They can't go there.
Right.
So this is obviously very much a no-go area for mainstream archaeology, but there's so much overwhelming evidence that points towards this antiquity, the incredible age. But what Adam's calendar is just a great example of the incredible resourcefulness and knowledge of advanced technology of the ancient civilizations that first of all constructed it, and keeping in mind that Adam's calendar is actually in the heart of millions of these circular ruins, or as they've become known as the stone circles of South Africa and Zimbabwe. So it's really what I would call, I guess, the centerpiece, or the flag, or the centerpiece of the ancient ruins of southern Africa. And it's right on the edge. It's totally broken. It's a completely broken down site, like many of these ancient sites around the world.
Right.
Are vandalized and broken, and there lies a very important question. Why are all of these ancient sites so badly broken and vandalized? And there's some very interesting answers to that question, which we might get to if we come around to this. But Adam's calendar is not just a calendar that actually you can tell every day of the year by the setting sun and where the shadow falls from the one rock. So as the sun sets, the one rock on the side of the setting sun casts a shadow on the second rock, and that shadow moves across the stone from the one edge of the stone to the other edge of the stone, and that is 1 year's passage. And when it reaches the one edge, that's the summer solstice, it stops and moves back.
Oh, wow.
When it reaches the other edge, the winter solstice, and then the shadow stops and starts to move back. So it was perfectly constructed for people, I guess, to be able to see what time of the year it is, or where they are in the passage of time during the year. And it's right on the edge of the Barberton crater, close to a little village called Kaapsehoop. And Kaapsehoop is famous for one very important thing. It was part of the South African gold rush that started in the 1860s originally, and then by 1882 it exploded at Kaapsehoop, and down in Barberton, when they discovered the biggest gold nugget at Kaapsehoop in South African gold rush history, 5.2 kilograms.
Wow.
Gold nugget the size of a fist.
Wow.
And that just sparked a whole gold rush there at Kaapse Hoop, right on the edge of the Barberton crater, where this huge impact crater is. It's the oldest geology on Earth, together with some sites in Australia. So it's a very lucrative and attractive place for geologists that study ancient life forms and so forth. Come to the Barberton crater. There's a drive there called the Genesis Drive, where you can drive around the crater. It's huge. It's about 22 kilometers across, or maybe more. So it's a huge crater, and the crater has some very interesting and mysterious anomalies in it. For example, the whole crater is just full of sand. When you're down in the bottom of it, where it's quite hot down there in the Barberton area, it's down in the Lowveld. So it's a very, very active farming area, tropical fruit, mangoes, lychees, avocados, and so forth. A very strong farming community. And then obviously the town of Barberton, which is a frontier town for the gold mining gold rush era, from the 1860s through 1880s, and then shortly after that, the gold was then discovered in the late 1880s in Johannesburg, and then a lot of the focus shifted from this part of the world to Johannesburg, and that took off, obviously, as we all know, what has become the gold capital of the world. But the fact that Adams Calendar is situated right on the edge of the Barberton crater, where right across Adams Calendar there's Sheba Gold Mine, the richest gold mine in the world still today. And there's some phenomenal stories about what happens in Sheba Gold Mine and how much gold is actually in there. And then obviously the mine, the gold that was discovered at Kaapse Hoop, right next to Adams Calendar. And you realize that this is not a coincidence, because Adams Calendar is connected to what the Sumerian tablets or the Sumerian texts, the clay tablets, thousands and thousands, if not millions of clay tablets that refer to these beings called the Anuna gods, or as they've become known as the Anunnaki. And there's an extensive tale and a story told in the Sumerian texts of their main deity called Enki, who was the sort of supreme commander god or being, who led this group of beings to come and mine gold on Earth. And in their process of mining gold, they decided that they couldn't mine enough gold. There weren't enough of them, and they needed help. So they cloned a new species called the Adamu species. And this is where we start seeing the crossover between the Bible and the Sumerian text and the creation story. And we suddenly see the appearance of a new species called Homo sapiens. And Adam's Calendar is connected to many of these very important stories and information, not only to do with the mining of gold, because it sits right on the edge of the Barberton crater there, which is just must have been, in ancient times, must have been filled at the bottom of it, must have had hundreds, if not thousands, of ancient gold mines. And the gold is still there. But it's also connected to the era and the moment when these beings called the Anuna or the Anunnaki decided they needed to clone a helper slave to help them mine the gold in the gold mines. And Adam's Calendar is inextricably connected to that as well. So it is a phenomenal ancient site of vast importance to all of humanity, not just to South Africa, because it seems that it has something to do with the sudden emergence and the appearance of a species called Homo sapiens, or the Adamu race. And it also opens a door to many, many questions with some answers to the gold mining and the ancient obsession for gold with the Anuna from the Sumerian text. It never ends. It just, clay tablet after clay tablet talks about the Anuna and their quest for gold. And the fact that gold has remained the obsession of humanity until today. And we literally cannot separate humanity from our obsession with gold.
Right. Now, I just want to address the side chat and just let them know that there is a link to your YouTube channel directly below this video, so people can always go and have a look at that later. And there you'll find out more about some of the stuff that Michael talks about. Now, Michael, you do tours, don't you? Tell us about the tours that you do.
Are you referring to the tours to the ancient sites?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah. So when I arrived here in 2007, late 2007, and then I settled here early 2008, January, it was a little town, about 5,000 people right in the mountains, and surrounded by the mountains and rivers that come down the mountains. And the mountains are just covered in these stone circles. If you go into Google Earth, you'll see them. They're everywhere. And I realized very quickly that this is going to become a tourist attraction. And people started to email me when they saw my posts or they read my book. And then I released Adamu's Calendar, the book, which is followed by Temples of the African Gods. And so people were finding those books, and then they were really interested in coming to see these ruins. So I started to take people on tours of these circular stone structures, or the stone circles as we call them. And that developed and evolved over a 12-year period now into a very nice tourism business, which now is dead. This lockdown, unfortunately. And so we get a lot of people that come through here. They come from all over the world. We do daily tours, we do half-day tours, we do full-day tours, and tours that last a few days or several days. All depends how much time the people have or how deep they want to go. So I also have a museum, obviously, that I created already in 2008. I started to collect the various tools and artifacts that I started to pick up and collect because I realized that they were just really mysterious and weird. And I started to collect them, and thank God for that, because they have now become part of a priceless collection of tools and artifacts that you cannot find anywhere else in the world that connect us to the activity of the Anunnaki and their knowledge of advanced technology. And we need to talk about that in much more detail. So yes, I do tours. We go to the Stone Circle ruins. We go to Adamu's Calendar. We go to the Giant Footprint, which is about a 1.5 hour drive from here. And that blows people's minds because, here you got a footprint of a 10-meter tall being, maybe 12-meter tall being, and it's right there. You're looking at it and your mind starts to wonder what's going on here.
Is it a human footprint?
Oh, yes, very much a human footprint.
Wow.
Pictures of that, you find pictures on my website, michaeltellinger.com, and also on my YouTube channel. And for people that are really interested in this, they can sign up to my video channel. If you go to michaeltellinger.com, you'll see on the top right-hand side there's a link to join my special subscription channel, where I put out regular weekly new episodes and new videos with new lectures, information, and so forth. So all of this information is on my website, on YouTube, and on my private channel, and it's just growing and growing because the information that is here under our feet is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it deals with the largest, just because what we didn't mention, Scott, is that what we're dealing is here with the largest concentration of stone ruins found anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that because tell us about these stone circles and what the theory is about them.
Yeah, the stone circles were written about 500 years ago already by the Portuguese when they came past the Cape of Good Hope, and they refer to these stone ruins in their journals. And Antonio Fernandez already in the early 1500s landed up at Great Zimbabwe, wondering what the hell this is and who built it. And they were told at the time, the Portuguese, when they asked the local tribes who built these structures, they were told unequivocally, we don't know who built them. We didn't build them. We don't know who built them. Somebody else must have built them. And that's really important information because that's not what modern historians and modern archaeologists tell us. They tell us a very different story.
Right.
They tell us exactly who built it, when they built it, how they built it, as if they know. I don't know where they get that information from or how they reach those conclusions, but that's certainly not a conclusion you can reach from the research that I've done and the evidence that I have in my museum. So what is happening here is that we're uncovering an ancient civilization, a vanished civilization that we know absolutely nothing about until I came along and started exposing it to the world in 2007. And it's the largest civilization, ancient civilization anywhere on Earth. There are more than 10 million of these structures, 10 million of these stone circle ruins. Now, these circular ruins they're called stone circles because they have a circular shape, and they're made up of smaller stones, anything from 10 kilograms to 200 kilograms, sometimes a little bit bigger, but they're not like pyramids or anything like that. So it's possible that they were built by people carrying the stones, absolutely. But when you look at the size of this, the size that it covers, 450,000 square kilometers, if not more, of these structures, covering probably 1/3 of South Africa and most of Zimbabwe. So it runs north from South Africa right into Zimbabwe and across Zimbabwe all the way to the north. And you start to realize the amount of work that it took to put this together. It is quite spectacular. I'll come back to what I think it is, but first we need to discuss a little bit more detail. So what I started to find when I first arrived here is that there were these weird stones that I started to pick up, and these long elongated stones, very hard, very, very hard rock. And as you pick the stones up, they're very strange. They look like French loaves, like imagine a French loaf of bread, right?
Right.
And some of them are long, like, more than a meter, and then shorter ones, and they just boggle the mind. Why would stones be this weird shape? And then I discovered that these elongated stones have a very interesting property. They ring like bells. When you strike them gently tap them with another stone, or even with your knuckles, that long stone literally rings like a bell. And people just can't believe it when they hear it. Again, on my YouTube channel, you can go listen, watch the video where I ring the stones like bells, or just Google or search on YouTube stones that ring like bells, and it'll probably pop up. So I started collecting these weird stones that ring like bells, that were these long elongated stones, wondering why are these stones these weird shapes, and why do they ring like bells? And it was that acoustic property that attracted my attention to the stones and the aerial view of the stone circle structure, the shape of the stone circles. And because I'm a student of sound, most of my life being a musician and so forth, and also being interested in sound, what it does, how it works, I'm very au fait with the study of cymatics. Cymatics is the study of sound manifesting into physical form, physical shape. Some of your listeners might be aware of when you take a metal plate and you put sand on a metal plate, and you put a sound frequency through it. Every frequency, like if you and you tune the frequency up, like every note, every frequency has a very specific and a unique shape that it creates out of the sand. And that is known as prime resonance frequency, or a cymatic pattern, or a cymatic shape. Cymatics being the name for the study of sound manifesting into physical form. And I would highly recommend that your listeners go and check out Hans Jenny. I think the whole documentary is available on YouTube. It is a groundbreaking documentary on cymatics from the 60s already. It will blow your mind. You start realizing that when you read the opening phrase of the Bible, when it said, and God said, "Let there be light," you start to realize what that truly means. And we can come back to this because in that first opening statement of the Bible, you basically have a complete and utter breakdown of the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics. It is a spectacular bit of information. For those in the know will know what I'm referring to, and those that are new to this will be a wonderful beginning to a wonderful journey of discovery, of great joy and great information and knowledge that is not taught at school or at university. In fact, they go to great lengths to try and cover this knowledge up, because once you start exploring the power of sound and what sound can do, you're getting into the closer and closer to the source code of everything in creation, because sound created light, right? Yeah. And I know that a lot of people might go, what are you talking about? We can get into that, and I'll explain it in great detail about the quantum mechanics of that, how that works with electromagnetic fields and magnetism and sound, how they're connected. So the reason I'm bringing this up, because if you don't know that, then you'll look at these stone circles as an archaeologist who really doesn't know anything about anything else except digging up stuff and and logging it and recording it well. And unfortunately, that's what the problem is, that our academia and our subjects that we study are so compartmentalized that you only know how to dig stuff up, but you don't really know how it connects to anything else around it. And so just like our education, our lives become compartmentalized, right? So to make any sense of this information and this research and these discoveries, I guess I was fortunate that I had a broad interest, from pharmaceutics to medicine to sound to music to astronomy to history to archaeology, which is something I studied most of my life.
Right.
So when I stumbled upon the sound and I saw the shapes of the stone circles resembling cymatic patterns, each stone circle has a completely and utterly unique shape. And I knew already that the stones that are associated with the stone circle walls ring like bells. The penny dropped for me, and I realized that this is all about sound, and that each stone circle represents the sound that comes out of the earth at that specific place. Just like the sand on a metal plate in a much smaller experiment, just like the plate would be the earth's surface and the sand would be the stones on top, and that sound frequency coming from under the plate, the metal plate, creates that very specific and unique shape out of the sand. It's exactly what the stone circles are. Stone circles represent the sound frequencies that come out of the earth at that specific point. But because the earth is not even, and there are different soils and materials and silica and all the stuff that we find in the soil underneath the surface, that means the frequency is changed, and every stone circle is completely and utterly unique. There are no two stone circles that are the same. It's impossible, because the way the sound frequency manifests into physical form when it hits the surface of the ground at that particular place.
Right.
So what we're dealing with here, Scott, is we're dealing with very sophisticated and a very advanced knowledge of sound and resonance, and how to use the natural frequencies of the earth. And if your listeners don't know this, the earth rings all the time. The earth rings like a bell. It never stops ringing. And those sound frequencies keep coming up and hitting the surface of the earth everywhere. And so these guys knew how to use that subtle sound, the subtle frequencies, or probably the Schumann resonance and other resonances around that area, the Schumann resonance, how to use those frequencies and convert them into useful and usable source of energy. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how do I know this?
Yeah. I just want to
measured it.
I just want to say that before we actually had you on, I played that short video clip where I was talking to you back in 2011, and
right.
Yeah, we had you ringing the stones like a bell, and also showing that little video clip with I think it's polystyrene or something like that, that's floating on the sound waves, and how it sort of does different things depending on the sound wave you're talking about. So the people watching should have a little bit of knowledge about what you're talking about, but just scratching the surface. So please go ahead. Tell us about the strength of sound waves, because you're talking about stones that are 200 kilos. And tell us how they move those stones.
Well, let's first come back to sound, right? So,
Yeah.
so sound literally is the primordial source code of everything. But sound it could be confusing because, when you study sound and people, you say speed of sound is 360 meters a second or whatever it is. And then the speed of light is much faster. So people always think that light is the superior thing and light is the final frontier and the final barrier. And therein, unfortunately, lies the deception, the great deception that was woven into our physics and our education system. We can come back to that if you need to. What we need to do is recognize the power of sound and how important sound is. Now, sound is just the way that resonance and frequency manifests itself in this density of ours on Earth, in this environment, in our atmosphere. Resonance and frequency manifest as sound, so we can hear it in our ears, we can feel it in our bodies of very low frequencies that rumble our stomach and our internal organs, and some frequencies hurt our ears, and when they get very high, we can't hear them anymore. Just because we can't hear them doesn't mean they don't exist, right? There are as many sound frequencies as you can imagine, just like there are as many light frequencies that you can imagine,
right?
But you can't see them. We can only see a tiny little spectrum sliver of the light spectrum, and we can only hear a tiny little sliver of the audio spectrum, the sound frequencies. It's a very good thing that we can't hear what we can see, and we can't see what we hear, because that would be a very confusing and a very scary experience.
Right.
So it's very clever that our ears hear certain frequencies and our eyes see very different frequencies. Keep in mind that every sound frequency has a light frequency attached to it. So I'm just giving you a bit of background here on how all this stuff works. And this is not what they teach us at school and at physics. I spent most of my adult life relearning or forgetting what I was taught at school and at medical school and relearning new information. This is a great tragedy, and this is why we need to readdress the entire education system completely. It needs a complete and utter overhaul from beginning to end.
Right.
But sound, as you know, the opening phrase of the Bible says, in the beginning, there was nothing, and the Spirit of God moved over the waters, and God said, let there be light. Wow. Well, what we just heard there is a fundamental lesson in the manifestation of matter out of nothing with sound. So out of the vacuum, as people that might know, out of the vacuum or the 0-point field that we find at the center of a toroidal field comes this rumbling sound, and it manifests into physical form. And this is why when you start studying sound, you discover that sound manifests in toroidal fields or toruses. They're like little donuts. Imagine a donut, and that's what they look like. These donut-shaped structures that make up everything in reality around us. And this is just spectacular. And so with sound, you can do everything because it's a primordial source code. Sound, you can levitate stuff, you can kill viruses, you can kill bacteria, you can also kill viruses and bacteria with light. So Donald Trump was right. You can kill viruses and bacteria with light. This has been done for thousands of years.
I should wear my Trump hat.
Ancient cultures were killing diseases and viruses and bacteria and diseases with light frequencies. This is nothing new. This goes back thousands of years. And then also sound frequencies. But many of your listeners might know the famous Royal Raymond Rife, who I suppose many people will find when they start studying the importance of sound and sound healing. Because Royal Rife in the 1930s was the one that was rewarded by the American Medical Association in 1931 in Pasadena, as they called him the man who found the cure for all disease. Just think about this, the man who found the cure for all disease. So one moment he's revered and celebrated because he basically cured cancer at will. He cured all kinds of diseases. He worked out sound frequencies for every imaginable disease that we had. And he became so good at this that he could literally just take patients and within 24 hours or very short space of time cure a person from cancer by knowing what frequencies to expose that patient to.
What happened to him?
So when we talk about Sorry?
What happened to him?
Well, Royal Rife was just exonerated. They turned him he became a target because he became a huge threat to the medical industry, obviously, because disease is a big money-making racket, as you know, for Big Pharma. And Royal Rife was literally going to just take out the entire Big Pharma industry. They're not going to put up with that, so they started to smear him with all kinds of stuff and burn down his laboratory and things happen, and it's just, you know what they like. They target you and they make your life miserable, and you spend the rest of your life fighting and defending yourself, and before you know it, you're too old and you die. And that's pretty much what happened to Royal Raymond Rife.
What a shame.
Anyway, but he's not the only one. There are many other people that have found cures for diseases over the millennia, especially the last 150 years or so. Been phenomenal discoveries made in technology with sound and curing disease and free electricity, obviously, energy devices like Nikola Tesla, and he's not the only one. There have been many others since. So in essence, we should be able to cure all disease. We should not be quarantined, because cures for all disease exist. They're out there. They're out there right now. We can cure any disease. And energy and electricity generation in infinite amount is available. That technology is out there as well. But those are the two areas that are the biggest areas under control by the global elite: pharmaceutics, health, and energy. So anyone that makes discoveries in those two areas is either bribed, bought off, threatened, or killed. Simple as that. And again, I say this not because I think so. I say this because I know so, because I've met the people that either been threatened or people that did the threatening in the past for large oil and energy companies, that were the people that were sent to find the threats and take them out. So it's just a ridiculous situation, and this is why, you know, this whole Corona thing is just a big scam. We can cure it. This should not even be an issue. All these viruses, all this stuff is totally and utterly curable, and this is just a scam to try and get humanity into quarantine to see how they can control us and just make us know that we're a species, a slave species that can be controlled and manipulated, and that we are not in charge. We're not in control.
Well, let's get back to coronavirus shortly. There are a couple of other things I'd like to cover with you before we go there. Okay, now you mentioned...
we were talking about sound. I'd get distracted so easily. But I just want to mention a few more things that sound can do.
How does sound lift stuff?
Can put out, sound levitates. Sound is a levitating tool. Sound is the ultimate levitating technology. Laser beams. That little video that you showed is a very good example for people to imagine that sound can levitate things. But unfortunately, that is the wrong part of sound, wrong aspect of sound that demonstrates that levitation. Those are just sound pressure waves in air. So that can be explained, and you can't lift up heavy objects. I think the heaviest object they lift up with that is about 50 milligrams or something like that. Nothing heavy.
Right.
If you want to pick up a very heavy object with that kind of very loud sound frequencies that create the pressure waves and trap the object in the moving or standing air pressure waves, that is not possible. So what happens is that sound exists in a very different form, which is known as hypersound. And I'll explain what hypersound is in a second. But in some of my lectures over the years, if you go into YouTube as well, you can see my lectures that go back many years, like 10 years or so.
Right.
And you can just watch them progressively, and I take you through the various things that sound can do. It's just crazy. It's anything you can imagine can be done with sound. It's literally crazy. And the most advanced thing is that once you get to the point of really understanding what sound is and how sound can be moved and propelled beyond the speed of light, and this is where it gets really interesting. And this is where people that are brainwashed and live in a box of mainstream academia or mainstream education, this is where they normally freak out when you tell them that sound travels faster than the speed of light. In fact, sound travels infinitely fast. and I'll explain it to you in a minute.
Right.
Light is just a barrier. Light is a barrier. Light is an aspect of sound. It's the other way around. So light can only exist if you have sound, original primordial source code of sound. But it's the combination of sound and light together that seem to manifest physical form and shape like a planet or anything else. And this is where the whole thing of consciousness comes in, and why the guys that study quantum mechanics and quantum physics start to go a bit crazy, because everything they experience on a quantum level completely and utterly contradicts what we discover and find on a physical form, and where Newtonian physics is shoved down our throat, which is just a very dumbed down version and a very narrow baby infant way of observing the reality around us, not understanding where that reality comes from. It comes from the quantum world, and it's manifested into this physical world. So at this point, I need to be very, very clear on this. The fact that our scientific education separates the two areas of research or science into quantum mechanics and into Newtonian physics, and the two are very distinctly separated, clearly tells us that they don't know what they're talking about, because you can't have two separate laws that govern this reality around us, because everything is connected.
Yeah.
It appears like it's governed by two sets of laws, but it's actually the same law from the quantum side, the quantum field, that we have misinterpreted as it manifests into the physical form around us, whether it's our bodies, the cells and the atoms in our bodies, or the sand and the mountains and the rocks around us. Wow, did I get digressed once again? But this is, I'm just, sorry.
I'd like to move on to, you mentioned that a lot of these stone circles were vandalized, and the Zimbabwe ruins, they weren't for some reason. What actually happened? What took place for them to be vandalized?
Well, the stone circles are vandalized not because they want to vandalize them, but first of all, there was a great event that destroyed this whole ancient civilization. Some sort of an apocalyptic huge event like that wiped out everything here. And it seems like it was a flood. It seems like it was vast volumes of water that flowed right across all the mountains here. And the reason I say it, because we're finding fossilized fish and seashells on top of mountains inside the stone circle ruins. And we're finding mud sedimentation, the stone circles covered by mud and soil and sand on tops of mountains. And that can only happen if there's water that went over there and deposited the sand and the mud. And then over thousands of years, so I suspect the Great Flood must have been here and affected this entire place, and probably was the event. It seems like it was the biblical flood that actually destroyed this vast ancient civilization here, and then it was restarted some time later. That time period is very vague. We don't really know. But it was restarted at some stage later, and many of the stone circles that were covered by the flood were then reused and reopened and carried on using them as energy generating devices. But at the same time, a few thousand years after that, many of those stone circles seem to have been deserted, and a lot of the areas were then inhabited by the Bantu tribes as they were coming down from the north. And a lot of the Bantu tribes would move into these clusters of stone circles when they would find them and convert them into their dwellings. So from the original structures that had no doors and entrances, they were all connected to each other. Please go to my website and watch the videos so you know what I'm talking about. So you got these stone circles.
Sorry guys, we seem to have lost Michael for a second. I'm sure he'll be back. Just while we're waiting for Michael to reconnect, I've got a bunch of questions. Thanks guys, I've got them all here. I hope I've got them all here. Let me just see if I can get Michael back on the line for us. Give me a second. Okay, I'm just going to reconnect to Michael. Okay, let's just reconnect again. So, how are you finding this discussion? Interesting? If you find it interesting, just put 1. If you find it not interesting, put 2. Let's see what the consensus is. Okay, here we go again. You gotta love the internet, haven't you? I think he's talking, not realizing that we're not connected. Oh, there we go. Bunch of 1s. Fantastic. I'm pleased you're enjoying it. I'm sorry about this break, guys, but you know what the internet can be like. I might send him a Skype message. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hi, Michael.
Hello, sir. Yeah, sorry, I lost you there.
Yeah, we had a bad internet connection, and we lost you for a couple of minutes, but you're back. Your camera's not on again.
All right. Here we are. Can you see me?
Not yet. Oh, there you are. Now we see you. Perfect. Okay. So where we were at was you were talking about what happens with the ancient sound technology, and then suddenly you froze and you went off. So
right. So was that? Did I get to where the stunt circles are connected by the channels? Did you get that?
No.
No.
We went.
Okay.
Go back about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Wow. So the stone circles are not just standalone structures. Stone circles have no doors and entrances. As I'm not sure if I mentioned that already, but that's a very important fact.
Right.
The fact that the original structures don't have any doors and entrances is a very clear indication that whoever built them, well, we have a very clear idea who built them, the Anuna or the Anunnaki from the Sumerian clay tablets fame. They built them because they were here mining gold in vast quantities, just insane amount of gold mining that went on here in ancient times. And when I say ancient times, I'm talking about, going back 300,000 years and even further back. So they built this huge machine. So the stone circles basically are these stone circular structures that pick up the frequencies of the earth, the sound frequencies. They amplify it, so the walls of the stone circles are actually an amplification device for the subtle frequencies of the earth. And they amplify the sound frequencies through the walls. The sound moves around, and as the sound moves around and gets amplified, it creates electromagnetic fields. So not only are we measuring sound frequencies coming out of the stone circle walls, but also electromagnetic fields and very, very high energy, up to 450, 480 megahertz of electromagnetic fields coming out of some of the stone circles. This is insane.
Ah.
And then we have...
Who measured that? We
measured that several times. We've had very sophisticated measuring devices, tools that people measure it, and for the first 2 or 3 years, I didn't know this, but what we started to pick up is people that are sensitive to energies. And there's some people that are very sensitive to energies. They can feel a change in electromagnetic fields very quickly.
Right.
They're hypersensitive to it. So when they walk into the stone circles or even come close to them, they can pick up that something is going on, and they feel either good or uneasy. And so right in the beginning already in 2008, we started to pick up telltale signs that something weird was going on there. It would, for example, you would lose your GPS on your cell phone when you go in there. And especially at Adam's calendar. That's the most powerful one of them all.
Just on the subject of energy, Michael, I have to tell you, I went to Norfolk Island, which is a little island off Australia, several years ago, and there are a lot of ghosts on Norfolk Island. And I went on this evening sort of dinner, and at the back of this house there's a room where they say you can actually feel the presence of a ghost. And I walked to the back to actually go and check this out, and I could feel something. It was like an energy. So that's you can actually feel the energies of different things which you can't see. Sorry, back to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Just like you can't hear the sound frequencies doesn't mean they're not there. The dogs can hear them. You can't hear them, but your dogs can hear them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean it's not there. It's outside of the spectrum of our visible frequency capacity. So just to really cut a long story short here, and in case I start boring you with this, because it's such a big thing that I go into a lot of detail in a lot of my lectures about the technology and the science of all this, because this is what I must tell you. This is the leading edge of science and technology in the world today. The most advanced research labs, whether they're privately funded labs or military or the secret military industrial complex, the most advanced research labs in those areas are the labs and the research places that work with sound, resonance, Caesar technology as opposed to laser technology.
Right.
Caesar technology, when you take sound and you turn it into a Caesar beam as opposed to a laser beam.
Right.
And how you do that is you use a cone-shaped tool to turn sound into a Caesar beam, a coherent beam of sound. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because when you take sound and you speed it up through a cone-shaped structure, and you get a Caesar beam that comes out the other side. First of all, you can't see that Caesar beam because sound is invisible. So we can't see a Caesar beam, but it is infinitely more powerful than a laser beam. And the reason I say this is because the sound, as it comes out the tip of that cone-shaped tool, the sound starts to move at hypersound speeds, which means it moves far beyond the speed of light. Wow. And again, if any of your listeners are worried about or confused about this, say, how does it work? Well, this is nothing new. This is nothing. It's not hidden. Well, I guess they are trying to hide it, but it's just not publicized in mainstream media, because this kind of information doesn't serve the education system at all, because that makes the kids ask too many questions, and they don't want to have to go there to answer them, because then they start giving away the secrets that have been shut out from our education system, that were lost, or that we had in ancient times. The ancient civilizations had all this knowledge. That knowledge was lost, and our modern education system obviously has discarded all that knowledge of healing and curing and technology, levitation, sound, technology, and so forth. So when sound moves beyond the speed of light or creates a Caesar beam, it can do anything. Basically, it seems to work with consciousness. And now I speak from intuition and discussing this with many great scientists around the world, how this works. And it seems to work with intuition, and you actually start to tweak that with your mind and your thoughts. And this becomes really, really interesting. So you could literally take a Caesar, a cone-shaped tool, and aim it at an object and think of a thought. Think of a thought. And remember, your thought is what? Your thought is a frequency in your brain.
Yeah.
You've just generated energy through your thought. That thought goes through your body, into your arm, and into your hand, your fingers, and into the cone-shaped tool that you're pointing at something.
Right.
So that frequency and sound frequency then goes into the cone-shaped tool and becomes a Caesar beam tool. And this is what I suspect they were doing, and this is how they were using it. But there's all kinds of other stuff. Yeah. I'm jumping a little ahead of myself here, because your listeners obviously not I haven't taken you through the process of initiating you into this knowledge.
Right.
But so that let's come back to the stone circles, because the reason I mentioned the cone-shaped tools is because right in the beginning, in early 2008, I started to collect and pick up these cone-shaped tools in the stone circles and lying around the mountains among the stone circles, and all these weird cone-shaped tools, and I couldn't understand, why am I picking up these weird cone-shaped tools of different sizes? So I started to collect them, and again, thank God I did, because it was about 3 years later that I discovered the significance of cone-shaped tools, and I realized that all ancient cultures have a very advanced knowledge and documentation of using cone-shaped tools in their rituals, in their special ceremonies, and in their advanced technology. And it's everywhere. Every ancient culture, from the ancient Australian cultures. I've got some cone-shaped tools from Australia, obviously Africa, the United States, the Incas, the Mayas. It goes back in Mexico, in Europe, all over Europe you find cone-shaped tools. In Sumeria, in Egypt. It's unbelievable that the archaeological world and society, for all these hundreds of years that they've been practicing archaeology, have missed this very important, critical bit of information.
Yeah. Well, Michael, there's a far bigger visual symbol of what you're talking about, and that is the pyramids. I mean, you've got pyramids in Egypt, you've got pyramids in Peru, you've got pyramids all over the place. There's clearly some advanced civilization that has had some way of traveling, like we do in planes, to get to different parts of the earth. And look, this is a whole new area we're getting into right now, but I'd like to get back to some of the things related to the area that you are at in Mpumalanga. And one of the big things is what happened to Kruger's lost gold, because apparently it was buried in your area.
Yeah, apparently it was buried in this area. It's a funny story, not wherever, but often when I go up the mountains in the past, I have discovered just in the middle of a mountain somewhere, there's just this big hole. And you go, what is this? Why is there a hole in the middle of nowhere here?
Yeah, yeah.
And then after a while, I realized that there's this whole treasure map that these treasure hunters have, and they figure out that Kruger's gold would be somewhere here, and they have some clues or leads or something, and they decide that this is where Kruger buried his gold, and they come from who knows where, and they come and they dig a bloody hole on the mountain somewhere, believing that Kruger's gold would be buried there.
Yeah, just for people who don't know, what happened was after the Boer, or when the Boers lost the Boer War, Paul Kruger got on a train with all the gold that the old Transvaal government had, and somewhere near Waterval Boven, they buried or hid that gold, and this is what we're talking about, and it was a huge amount of gold. Sorry, back to you, Michael.
Yeah, so the story, just to get the slight more accuracy of that story, it was actually towards the beginning of the Anglo-Boer War, the South African War, as it's now called, when Paul Kruger knew that he was the Boer were in trouble because there were 470,000 British troops here against 60,000 farmers on horseback, defending their farms against the most powerful empire on earth. And Paul Kruger was a very smart and shrewd guy. And on the 4th of June, 1900, the year 1900, 4th of June, a train left Pretoria that was filled with gold. And the emphasis here, it was a train, not a train carriage. And it left Pretoria, and it went due east on the railway tracks that Paul Kruger built from Pretoria to Maputo, to the coast of Mozambique. And by the time that train arrived at Machadodorp, which is the town just before you get to our town of Waterval Boven, and the train stopped there to whatever, and that was the last place the train was ever seen. After that, the train mysteriously vanished, never to be seen again, and all the gold vanished with it. So that has become one of the greatest treasure hunter mysteries on Earth, because that gold, if it was several train carriages of gold, I mean, that's worth trillions of dollars today. Not just billions, trillions of dollars.
Right.
But the question we have to ask, because we often get stuck on the wrong question, because our minds work very differently from what the reality really tells us or shows us. Everyone is obsessed with the gold and wondering where the gold is buried. The reality is that in 1900, the annual production of the gold mines of Johannesburg was about 1 ton to 1.5 tons per annum. Paul Kruger's train left with a train loaded with gold. The question we should ask is, where did Paul Kruger find all the gold to fill a whole train?
Yeah.
And how come Paul Kruger had always had all this gold? He had so much gold, they would mint all these gold coins, the original Veldpond, the original Kruger coin, the Kruger gold coins that he'd minted that are now so famous and so valuable. You know that one of those original Kruger minted coins that from the year 1900 today is worth $98,000, just one of those coins.
Well, there's one that's overstamped 1900 or 1902, I'm not sure which date, which sold for a huge amount of money because it's unique. It's the only one. It's got a stamp on it. But let's get back to a subject that I think you can give us a link here. How do you link ancient technology and the people who lived back then to what's happening in the world today with the Rothschilds and what they're trying to do with the financial system? Tell us about that.
Well, you left a very important springboard platform of gold to ask that question,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
This is a premeditated question trying to entrap me, right?
No.
No, it's a very important question that is just so incredible. But before I answer that, I just need to finish that Paul Kruger story, because that's where it gets really weird and mysterious.
Go ahead.
So we didn't answer the question, where did Paul Kruger find all the gold to fill a whole train? And the answer to that is, I believe, and I have a lot of evidence to support that Paul Kruger, during one of the missions, when the Boer fighters, the Boer army were digging tunnels to hide from the British troops,
right?
They would dig these tunnels and hide in these tunnels. They accidentally stumbled upon one of the ancient Anunnaki tunnels of the ancient Anunnaki gold mines.
Okay.
Aha.
And that's where they got the gold.
Ancient Anunnaki gold mines are everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, look, I know this. Again, I can't go into the details, but we have the technology to know where they are. So when I say there are ancient gold mines here, I don't think they are, I know they are.
Right.
Because I've seen the technology that shows us where they are. Right? And for $1,000, I will sell you a map that shows you where they are. I'm just kidding. No, but I know, we do know we do know that these ancient mines are there. Yeah. To come back to being serious, I really believe that Paul Kruger stumbled upon one of these ancient tunnels and it was filled with gold. Why was it filled with gold? Keep in mind, okay, that the Anunnaki were mining gold on a scale and a level that we today, we can't imagine it, because we see everything in dollars and cents, right? And can we afford this, or can we do that? Have we got enough money to do that? Money did not exist. Anunnaki don't work. They didn't work with money. Civilizations across all of creation do not work with money. We're the only schmucks on this planet that have bought the lie, and we've been entrapped by this thing called money. So when the Anunnaki were mining gold, everything was about mining gold. So they did whatever it took to mine as much gold as they could. And this is why you find ancient gold mines right across the world, right across southern Africa and further north, right into Egypt. All of the Sahara was once an ancient gold mine, most likely, by the looks of it. Egypt is obviously an ancient gold mining empire. People forget that. Right across the Americas. There are ancient gold mines everywhere. Anunnaki were mining this planet on a scale that our little brains cannot comprehend.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I say that, and then, so they had gold everywhere, and they knew the flood was coming. But what do you do with all the gold when you know there's a big amount of water coming and it's just going to wash all your gold away and bury it in mud? What do you do with all the gold?
You dig a big hole.
You put it in you put it in underground tunnels. Yes.
Yeah.
You put it in the tunnels.
Yeah.
Because at least you know where the tunnels are, and you can go recover it when there's 10 meters of mud on top of the ground. It doesn't matter. The gold will remain in the tunnels.
Yeah.
And this is why I believe Paul Kruger found the Anunnaki gold in the tunnels.
Okay.
And the poor guy didn't know what he'd found. You know, what is this? And he might have thought it was some secret British golden stash. So he removed it, and he was trying to get rid of that gold early in 1900. You know, the war was only 7 or 8 months old at that stage, or maybe not even a year old.
Yeah.
And he was trying to get rid of that gold. So I trust that he got most of that gold out to Switzerland or some other parts of the world. But some of it was definitely, not all of it, but some of it was definitely buried in secret places around the Watervalboven, Ermelo, Machadodorp, this whole Lowveld area, even into the Kruger Park.
Wow.
You know, what a great place to hide your gold.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, who started the Kruger Park with all the wild animals? Paul Kruger.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good place to hide your gold? Because you can't get in there because the lions will eat you. Exactly.
Now, before we get to the question I asked you about the Rothschilds, we'll do that in a second. I just want to address the side chat and say, guys, after this question that I'm going to ask Michael to answer, we're going to get to your questions. I've got a bunch here. I must have about 20 to 30. So, oops, we seem to have lost Michael again.
Just give me a minute. Just have a chat there with the chat group. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, no problems. Okay, so Michael will be back in a second. He's going to answer this question about the Rothschilds and how this equates to what happened in ancient times, which will be an interesting discussion. But after that, we'll get to your questions. While we're waiting for Michael, are there any questions people would like to ask me? Because now's a good chance. Now's a good time. David says, how do we know it wasn't part of Solomon's treasure? Well, it could well have been, David. You never know, do you? I guess a lot of what Michael says is speculation, but it's very interesting to hear his point of view on things because, you know, it gives you another way of looking at things. Okay, I'm just copying some questions down here. We asked how my...
Scott.
Oh, you're back, are you? Great, okay. There we go. So, yeah, look, after this question about the Rothschilds, what we'll do is we'll turn to the questions we got from people who are watching. So, over to you.
Okay, so when you start studying ancient civilizations, the first thing you discover is that nothing is as you may have thought. That the origins of humankind and ancient human history is so far removed from what you find in mainstream history books, it is actually laughable. And so while I was researching origins of humankind when I was writing my book in 2004, and I stumbled upon a very interesting thing, which was completely unexpected. And that was the origins and the appearance of ancient royal bloodlines. In other words, the appearance of the first kings and the royal bloodlines on Earth. And then I suddenly, you know, like everybody would say, wow, okay, that's interesting. Well, where did royalty come from? Who appointed the first king to be the king? And then suddenly that king owns all the land and all the people are his subjects. They're just peasants. They don't own anything. and the king is just taking control of everything, and he can be a bastard king or he can be a benevolent king, but suddenly the people have no rights and the king has all the rights. Why would that situation arise in a community where people live together, they share, they contribute so that they have abundance of everything, and then suddenly one of those people appoints himself as king and everybody just bows down to him? How is that possible? Surely that's not going to happen, right? Because if somebody does that, if I wake up tomorrow morning in our village and I say, listen, call everybody together, and I say, listen, I've got a great idea. I had a fantastic dream last night. As of today, I'm the king, right? But this is how it's going to work. So all the land now belongs to me, and all of you are my subject, and you have to work for me. What do you think the people are going to say, right? It's just not going to wash.
Yeah.
So just the simple philosophy of the creation and the origins of royalty and the royal bloodlines becomes a big problem, because it has to be enforced. That royalty has to be enforced in a way that the one person, a minority individual, has more power or sway or weapons than the majority of the people, right? Otherwise, how would he ever become king? So while studying the Sumerian texts, the Sumerian clay tablets and the translations, I stumbled upon some of the earliest forms of explaining where the royal bloodlines suddenly appeared. And this is what we find on what's known as the King's Lists. The King's Lists are these clay tablets, and there are many of these King's Lists from the Sumerian era. And these King's Lists describe the kings, who ruled where and for how long, and the periods that these guys ruled is interesting in itself. Some of the kings lists are just short kings lists describing just a small number of kings that ruled a certain area for a period of time, and then there's some extensive kings lists that describe pretty much as many of the kings as I think we can identify from the Sumerian and pre-Sumerian period, much pre-Sumerian as well. Keep in mind that the Sumerians keep telling us in the Sumerian text that they got their knowledge from a time, before Sumeria existed. So, and these kings lists tell us how far back civilization goes, like 250 years, 260 years, 1,000 years, 260,000 years, and they mention a number of kings that ruled for thousands and thousands of years, each one. And then these kings lists tell us that there was a time very, very long ago when kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven. And the first kings were appointed by the gods to rule over humanity. And these first kings were put around the world, and they were given fierce weapons with which they could smite the people if they didn't listen. And there we have the sudden appearance, out of the blue, we have the appearance of the first royal bloodlines. And this is spectacular. So now suddenly we get a glimpse of how that happened, that these first royal priest kings were somehow appointed by these beings, or the gods, as the Sumerian tablets call them, the Anunnaki gods. And then what these first priest kings did, they obviously then took control of all the people, and they became the spokes entities to the people, and the gods would talk to them and they would deliver the message to the people, and vice versa. But they were given fierce weapons. They were given very advanced technology with which to smite the people if the people didn't listen or obey. And they did. They smited the people. And this is how the royal bloodlines inserted themselves and imposed themselves on humanity with advanced technology in ancient times. And that technology is possibly and probably much of the technology that I've discovered here surrounding the stone circles and the ancient ruins, because these are all Anunnaki installations. Then the first things that these priest kings did is they built temples. So they built these huge, vast temples that were like their palaces, impenetrable temples that people couldn't get into. And from there they ruled. And in these temples, they started to print the first forms of money. on clay tablets. And they started to issue, and this goes back 4,000 BC already.
Right.
Some of these clay tablets go back 4,000 BC, where they talk about these temples and the priest kings, and the interesting thing is that they're already practicing extortion and bribery. I mean, basically what they were doing is they would say, people, bring us your silver and bring us your gold. And if you bring us your silver and gold, we'll give you a piece of clay with some written inscriptions on it. And that'll be a token to say that you own this piece of gold that is now in the temple. It's a spectacular way for these kings and these high priest kings to collect all the gold and silver. And this is where the origins of money comes from. And it's fascinating. So what they did, they started to basically issue promissory notes in clay. Nothing has changed in 6,000 years. And today we still issue promissory notes, bills of exchange, checks.
So the whole banking system today is basically fiat money, which isn't worth anything. But the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers now have all the gold.
Yeah, I mean, even when it was based on gold, that was just a lie. That was just to pretend.
Yeah.
Nobody ever went and got their gold, because if they did, they would have nothing. So this is a very important moment to realize that money did not evolve with humanity and the needs of people. And this is unfortunately what we are taught at school, that money was a very slow evolutionary process of bartering and trading, and then it became money and promissory notes and all this absolute rubbish. That is what the banking institutions and the money makers throughout the ages have inserted into our education system, so they don't tell us the truth about the origins of money, that money appeared as a complete and a wholly evolved philosophy and a tool of enslavement that was inserted into humanity and then slowly manipulated and adapted. The whole philosophy of money on clay tablets and promissory notes and so forth was just adapted as people became multiplied and things spread. And so they just kept adapting the forms of money, but kept the control all the time. And then we obviously find wars and conflicts, and then some guys try and take over the money scam and the racket and so forth. So I realized that money is not part of human evolution, and that what would happen if you remove money from the system. And this is what happened to me in 2005 by studying the ancient civilizations. Right. So I started a process of imagining, what if I wake up tomorrow morning and money does not exist? There's just no money. It's not in our it's just not there. What will we do? How will we survive? And I would really like your listeners to do that, to go through that exercise yourself, because what you'll find is it is an incredibly liberating thought process. When you have no money, you can't go and buy something. Everything is available because people can build things. People have the capacity to build things, make things, grow things. So stuff is available, but there's no money to get it or buy it. So how are we going to survive? What are we going to do? It is a fantastic journey of discovery that liberates your ability to think, and you start to realize how when we remove money from society, suddenly everything becomes possible, because money no longer becomes the hurdle to progress or hurdle to creation or hurdle to abundance or to get stuff or to create stuff. And this is where the Ubuntu movement then arose out of that, and the principles or the philosophy of contributionism that I've been promoting since 2005. Philosophy of contributionism, which is the opposite of capitalism, where people contribute towards the benefit of everyone in the community. They contribute their skills and talents, and by contributing their skills and talents just a little bit, they have access to everything else that we collectively generate and create. And that then evolved over a 15-year period until what it is today, which we call one small town can change the world. And that is what is now currently attracting so much interest and so much excitement from people around the world, that it is really the idea whose time has come As you know, people are so sick and tired of what's going on in the world. They're so sick and tired of being slaves to the system, slaves to the bankers, the slaves to the big corporations, and there seems to be no way out. Well, there is a way out. It's called One Small Town Can Change the World. And I'd really like your listeners to go onto the Ubuntu Planet website and just watch the videos there, read the documents, and literally within the first half an hour or so, you're going to get a big fat smile on your face when the penny drops for you and you realize that we have a very simple way out of this mess.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to get to the questions because I've got so many questions here for you. So if you keep your answers fairly short.
How much more longer are we going, Scott?
I'd say between 30 minutes to about 60 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so if you just want to keep the answers quite short, because as I say, we've got a bunch of questions here. John Moslin has asked, ask Michael if he knows about the structures on the moon.
I've heard a lot about the moon. I've heard a lot about the structures on the moon. It was a big study of mine for many, many years. Yes, I'm familiar with the structures on the moon. But at the same time, my philosophy on the moon and what I think the moon is has shifted dramatically over the last 5 years or so, or since 2012 actually. And I'm quite at this stage, quite frankly, I don't know anymore what the moon is, and I'm not sure if it's actually real or if it's just a hologram or what the hell is going on. But the more you start to study it, the stranger and more bizarre it gets.
Right. Okay, now PE has asked, Michael, can you explain flat Earth versus globe Earth that we have been taught?
Are you serious? Do you want me to go into this? I don't think I should go into this because I've come under serious attack. What I'm going to tell people is go and do your research. Do your research and clear your mind. Put everything that you were told about the Earth, put it aside, because everything I was taught in medical schools mostly lies. Yes, some of the factual stuff is true, but the healing aspect of it and the curing and how do we cure and heal disease is absolute lies. I spent most of my life trying to unlearn that from medical school. So try and empty your mind of everything you were taught at school about the cosmos, about the Earth, how it all works and functions together. I'll give you a clue. I mentioned it earlier in when I was talking about the source of everything. The source of everything manifests in toroidal fields. So if you look at our galaxy, the shape of our galaxy is a toroidal field, is a giant torus, a giant donut. The shape of the galaxies are all toroidal fields, or they call them galactic disks and solar disks. And when you start studying the shapes and structures of toroidal fields, you'll start to find very interesting phenomena. Everything in our reality manifests into physical form in a toroidal field. And
Right.
go and study that and then reach your own conclusion.
Okay, now Tace Lawrence has asked, I have a personal question for Michael. If he doesn't want to answer it, it's okay. Does he believe in the creation or evolution?
Well, I absolutely believe in creation. We're divine beings. We're divine beings that are created by some sort of a divine process of who knows. We don't have an answer for that. Evolution is something that has been inserted into our science and history books as a piece of fiction. It's a long discussion we can have about this. Our DNA is not an evolved DNA. This is very important. If people don't know this, please pay very close attention to this. Our DNA in our bodies is not an evolved DNA. And I say this because I know this from having spoken to a number of world-class leading geneticists that are leaders in their field in genetic studies and work that has been done in genetics that'll blow your mind. I can't go into the detail now, but they make it very, very clear that our DNA, the human DNA, is a patchwork of spliced DNA from different creatures, different species. And this is why we have so many problems as a species, because it's not a natural I guess evolutionary might be a weird word, but it's a patchwork of DNA. When we talk about creation and evolution, it's a very long discussion, and you've just opened the door to a long and convoluted debate.
Right. Now, Charlotte Smith has asked, spheres found in Stilfontein. What do you know about that?
I know quite a lot about them. I have a Klerksdorp sphere in my museum. Klerksdorp spheres are very fascinating artifacts, I guess. They come in various shapes and sizes. Some of them have this little stitching around the side, like little cricket balls, and they go from little size like a smaller than a golf ball, half the size of a golf ball, to the size of a cricket ball. Like I said, some of them have the stitching that looks just like a cricket ball, and sometimes they're referred to as the cricket balls of the gods. The fascinating thing about them is that they seem to be artificially created. They seem to be not of natural origin. And that is a very interesting subject. When I first met Creator Mutwa in 2008, he asked me if I knew about them, and I said I did, but I never saw one. So then I went and looked at them in the Klerksdorp Museum, and then I was gifted one by a friend of mine. And I asked Creator, what were these for? And he told me that they were ancient sources of light, that they are sensitive to certain frequencies, and when you expose them to certain frequencies, they start to glow and give off light. And I didn't believe Creator at the time. I was a bit arrogant. And then something happened in my museum that we don't have time for right now that convinced me that Creator was right, that these were actually ancient sources of light, the Klerksdorp spheres.
Wow, okay. Now, Endura Grip has asked, was there any other fossilized remains found at the Giant's Footprint site?
Yes, there are fossils. I've picked up small fossils there, not big ones. However, if you really want to have your mind blown, it seems that the giant rock that is balancing halfway down the very steep hill going down from the Giant Footprint, that giant rock, it's about 250 tons, maybe more. It seems to be a giant heart, a fossilized giant heart. Again, until we go there, and I'll show you and give you the reasons why we think so and why I think so. But the reason I say that is because I have many examples of fossilized bones and body parts scattered throughout the mountains here. Some of them are very, very large, from a gallbladder that is the size of a gallbladder, what's it, bigger than a golf bag. Imagine a golf bladder twice the size of a golf bag, okay? And then we have hearts, I have ribs, we have legs and bones, knuckles of giant bones that have been chopped off that are the size of a Volkswagen Beetle and larger. So there are fossilized body parts and bones all over the mountains here. It's quite spectacular. And of course, I have many of them. The smaller ones that I can carry are in my museum, and some of the most obvious ones. I have hundreds of spectacular fossilized body parts in my museum that are very obvious. Anybody that studied anatomy or physiology or is a medical profession, they walk into the museum and they literally their jaw drops when they see these body parts. They just go, what is this? Where did you get these things? It's the uneducated people, the people that don't know anatomy. They're the skeptic. Oh, well, who's confirmed this? Have you had this tested? Have you had this checked out? Yes, I checked it out. I studied this stuff. I studied anatomy and physiology. This is a rib. I'm telling you, it's a rib. Yeah, so either you believe it or not. It's your problem. If you don't believe it, have a nice life.
Now, Gordon Blues has asked, was Great Zimbabwe really based on Solomon's Temple? And could it have been built by a lost tribe of Israel, related to the Lemba people, perhaps?
No. The answer to that is an absolute no. Great Zimbabwe is part of the millions of circular stone structures that cover South Africa and Zimbabwe. And the original structure at Great Zimbabwe is long gone. We don't know what the original structure looked like. It seems to me that it was rebuilt, possibly by Arabs a long time ago. There have been many Arabic artifacts and tools found there that were removed, unfortunately. Keep in mind that the original aristocrats from Europe that sent their teams there. These are all wealthy treasure hunters who would send their troops of tomb robbers and grave robbers and looters to all these ancient sites. They would just loot everything they could find that they thought would be valuable. So unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is gone. But when you start looking at the aerial photographs of Great Zimbabwe and the surrounding structures, it's very obvious to anyone that studies it for a little while that it's exactly the same structures as the stone circles of Southern Africa and other Zimbabwe around Zimbabwe that are not as grandiose. But Great Zimbabwe does have a weird mystery around it. So I will say that Great Zimbabwe itself may have been something else to start off with. But around it, there are many other stone circles around it as well. A lot of them are destroyed, and most of Zimbabwe is full of these ancient circular structures as well. But because the whole cymatic pattern, if you look at Great Zimbabwe from the air, it's got that cymatic shape as well. That suggests it is the shape of the sound coming out. But the giant conical tower at Great Zimbabwe, the conical tower gives away that it was a giant machine. Remember, I told you that cone-shaped tools are basically is the tool that turns sound into a Caesar beam. So the fact that we have this giant conical tower there means that it was a very, very powerful machine, and they used the frequencies generated by Great Zimbabwe to channel into that giant conical tower, and they were creating a very powerful Caesar beam there. I don't know what they were doing with it, but that's something that could go, that's an interstellar, intergalactic kind of machine.
Right. Okay. Now the next question for you is from, let me just get to it, Renell. Renell Griffiths asks, ask Michael what is the correct frequency for humans. I see this all around, but never know which to trust.
I know that's a loaded question. I think every human has their own particular frequency that they probably resonate at best. Keep in mind that we have trillions of cells in our bodies, and those cells have to be in harmonic coherence with each other, because if they're not, that's when you get into dis-ease or disease and you get sick and die.
Right. Now, Jessica van der Berg, are you there, Michael? Oh yeah, we've got you back. Yeah, we lost you for a second there.
All right, where did you lose me there?
No, we got most of what you said there. Jessica van der. Carry on.
The frequency of humans is a very interesting one. It all depends what perspective you're looking from. Are you looking at a frequency of children at birth or frequency of adults? And I suspect that might change throughout our lives. But what's important to keep in mind is that our organs in our bodies operate at certain frequencies. Every organ operates at a frequency. The cells and the atoms that make up those cells, that make up the organ, have specific frequencies to have the effect and the ability to make up that organ. So it's really difficult to say at what is the frequency of a human being. But what I can tell you is that the frequencies that make up creation are really interesting, and it could be that at the fundamental base or the core of the frequencies that make up our bodies are connected to the frequencies of creation, and these were exposed and discovered, I suppose you could say, by my good friend in California, and now I have a complete block on his name, who did a wonderful documentary called, oh my God, I must be, Eric Rankin. Sorry, Eric Rankin is my friend's name, in Laguna Beach, California. And Eric, go online and look up Eric Rankin, sonic geometry, and you'll discover the frequencies at which the universe sings and plays music. And it seems to be in the key of F sharp. This is unbelievable. This is really, really interesting. And what's even more interesting is that the universe, from this frequency of F sharp, you start seeing all the beautiful patterns emerge in harmonic frequencies, like playing notes on a piano, like a root note, the third, the fifth, and the octave. And when you start playing these notes, starting from F sharp, you start seeing these patterns of flowers of life, of pentagons, of hexagons, of cubes, all the platonic shapes, and all the structures that make up the sacred geometry of creation around us. And it all comes from the numbers that we find in the corners, the angles of the structures themselves. So every sacred geometric pattern, whether it's a cube or a triangle or a tetrahedron, whatever you look at, the angles of these structures actually give off frequencies that are the cause that are the cause for the shape of that actual structure. It is so beautiful. This is why God said, "Let there be light." The sound of creation, the sound of the creator or the creative source code manifested everything into creation. It's spectacular, and it's all interconnected in coherent harmonic resonance.
Now, on a related question, Donna has asked how to heal technic, too much chat, and ear ringing called tinnitus. Is this old age?
Yeah. Wow. I don't have an answer for that. I know that I sometimes get ringing in the ears, and I guess I concentrate and I meditate and it goes away. Whether that'll work for everybody, I don't know. But if I come up with an idea, there must be a way to get rid of it. There must be frequencies that'll get rid of it. We just, for example, recently, a friend of ours, Eileen Day McCusick, look up her work. It's phenomenal. Tuning the biofield. Eileen's work is groundbreaking, earth-shattering. And she was here at the Ubuntu Festival 2 years ago, and she brought some of her very special tuning forks that she's had designed. And these tuning forks, for example, they just remove the fat from your body. Literally, you just like ping this tuning fork and hold it onto your body, and it removes the excess fat from your body. I'm simplifying it, but what I'm saying is that I'm taking Eileen's work and I'm really minimizing it. Her work is spectacular. I'm just telling you that through vibration and frequency, using specific frequencies, you could probably cure your tinnitus. You can cure and do everything with sound. Absolutely.
Right. Jessica van der Berg has asked, has Michael got answers yet as to how to harvest energy from Taurus stones?
Yes. We Taurus stones give off energy themselves all the time. They never stop. You can feel it. People come into my museum. I have a whole bunch of the Taurus stones there, and some people walk into the museum, and they feel like they walk into a wall. They instantly stop and go, "Whoa, this place is too intense. I can't be in here." And my wife Emma has got very, very seriously skilled dowsing skills, or developed dowsing skills. And she actually doused the Taurus stones. Now, again, when you start talking about the Taurus stones or the donut-shaped stones that are archaeologists still today, it's just laughable. They still call them weights for digging sticks. It's so childlike. It's unbelievable. When these Taurus stones are very powerful energy generating devices that were created by the Anunnaki, and they actually wore them as beads around their neck. The overlords of the Anunnaki, they weren't the Anunnaki. They had other beings that they created and cloned that were much larger than we are. And they wore these Taurus stones like a necklace because it was the equivalent of the Egyptian Ankh. The Egyptian kings and pharaohs had their Ankhs. Those are their energy devices, their tuning forks to do all kinds of stuff with, magic with, levitate stuff, heal with. The original Anunnaki and their overlords here had the Taurus stones. Each Taurus stone had to be tuned to your body's energy so that your body's energy could activate that Taurus stone so you could use that energy. And I suspect they then use the cone-shaped tools to focus that energy either to create a Caesar beam or whatever they wanted to do.
Right.
But to harness the energy from the Taurus stones is a really interesting question and a tricky question. And can I tell you, that is what every researcher and inventor and scientist that has discovered toroidal fields, that is what they're after, that 0-point energy. Unfortunately, the Taurus stones are not balanced toroidal fields. The Taurus stones are one-sided torsion fields. They suck energy from the one side and they push it out the other side. This is why they were used as energy generating devices by the guys that used them here. But I suspect that to channel that, to trap that energy from a torus stone, at this stage, I don't know anyone that has figured that out.
Right. Okay, now Marlena de Villiers has asked, where can we purchase that special tuning fork?
You can go to Eileen Day McCusick, Tuning the Biofield, and you'll find just a huge amount of information there. Eileen is one of the great researchers and inventors, and just a beautiful, conscious soul that has uncovered a whole new field of sound and how sound can be used for healing and so much more.
Right. Now, Endura Grip asks, does Michael have a theory of the Taos hum?
The Taos hum. Explain to me the Taos hum.
I don't, that's the question. I know nothing about it.
Are you talking about the town of Taos in New Mexico?
I'm not sure. It's a question that he asked.
Okay, I'm not sure. If I know, I might know it as something else, but I'm not familiar with the Taos hum.
Okay, Gordon Blues says, does Michael have any idea how Ed Leeskallen built the Coral Castle?
Yeah, sort of. We were there recently. We were there last year in July, and we had a private tour with the director of Coral Castle, Laura May. When I met her and I told her who we were and what we were doing there, she got very excited and gave us a private tour of Coral Castle. So she showed us a lot of the special things that they don't normally show other people. And there's no doubt that Ed Leeskallen had levitation technology, and this is where I really, the penny of the cone-shaped tools dropped for me. So there's a story that I heard 10 years ago already, that one day 2 schoolboys apparently saw Ed Leeskallen levitate and move the stones while they were spying on him, and then they were caught and they were arrested by the police. They were taken for questioning the police station, and they said that they were school kids, just being mischievous.
Right.
So it's a real story, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I asked Laura May about this, whether it was a old wives' tale or if it was real, and she said no, it's real. It was a real event. These boys were taken to the police station, and they were questioned, "What were you doing there? Naughty boys, don't do that again." And to try and talk their way out of it, they say, "Oh, we saw the guy levitate the stones with ice cream cones." And the moment I heard that, I went, "Excuse me? Why would these boys make up a story like that? Who would make up a story like that?" Right?
Exactly. Now, Gordon Blues has asked a question related to what we were just talking about, and he says, "I wonder if Michael is familiar with Theoria apophysis channel and work on toroidal fields."
Yes, Ken Wheeler. Ken Wheeler is brilliant. I think Ken is probably the leading expert in magnetic fields in the world, in magnetism. I have not found anyone else that knows as much as Ken. So I have learned a lot from him, but I would like to share a lot with him, because there are some things that I think he'd be really interested in when he saw some of the toroidal stones and the technology that was left behind. Plus, I'm not sure he's figured out the cone-shaped technology yet. How cone-shaped technology is inextricably connected to toroidal fields. In fact, if you look at a diagram of a toroidal field, there's actually, they always show you a cone, like a V, going into the toroidal field and coming out the other side. So torus stones and toroidal fields are inextricably connected to cone-shaped technology.
Right. Now, Jessica has asked, would Michael like to know about undiscovered secret sites the general public might know about? How can they contact him?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always interested in new sites and secret, especially if they sites that could be shared with the world, because they have got a huge significance to our origins and ancient humanity. And my email is on my website, or I'll just give it to you now. It's michaeljtellinger michael.j.tellinger@gmail.com. michael.j.tellinger@gmail.com.
Well,
So
that's
if you have
easy to work out.
sites,
Yep. Okay.
yeah.
Fantastic. Now, PE has asked, can you ask Michael what disaster is next? Does he think is coming?
I think this is it. This is the final disaster. This is the one that they're throwing at us now to try and break the human spirit. They're throwing everything at us. It is the biggest false flag event in human history. It is the biggest abuse of human rights and human liberties and attack on the human spirit and our consciousness. They're trying to break us on every level. They're trying to divide us. They're trying to make us fight each other. And in some sense, they're sort of succeeding, but they're not really succeeding. I believe that thanks to, I know that some people might hate me for this, and it's just tough luck, but thanks to our friend that is running the USA right now, they're not succeeding because he has stopped them in their tracks and he's draining the swamp and exposing the guys that have been running this cabal for 5 to 6 decades now, and this is why they hate him so much. They just need to get rid of him. So I think that Donald Trump has, if you don't know this yet, I've put out a video 2 days ago that is already sitting on 200,000 views as of right now, about how Donald Trump took control of the Federal Reserve Bank in the USA towards the end of March. Very, very no fanfare, no mainstream news covered it. Why did they not cover it? Because the same cabal bankers that own the Federal Reserve Bank own all the mainstream news channels. So they're obviously not going to go out and tell the American people that the biggest reserve bank in the world has just been stolen by the President of the United States, who now has full control of the Federal Reserve Bank of the USA. That changes things dramatically. But what Trump has done in that sense, and this is, I'm answering your question in a slightly elongated way, why I believe there's no more disasters coming, is because that, I believe, is going to be the trigger that happens, that some other leaders of the world will probably and possibly and hopefully follow him and just simply take over the central bank away from the Rothschilds. Keep in mind, the Rothschilds don't have armies. They can't send an army out. They use the army of the puppet president or the puppet government to defend their central bank. Now that the USA no longer has an army, or the Rothschilds will not send the army out of the USA to go and invade your country and topple your regime if you took over your central bank, suddenly all the leaders of the world can do the same. This is a spectacular moment in human history. For the last 250 years, the first time ever that a Rothschild bank, the biggest Rothschild bank in the world, the Fed, has been wrestled away from them, and they can't say a word about it. That's the most incredible thing. So this is why I think we're seeing the end of it. We're probably in some of the most darkest times of human history right now. And a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are hungry, dying, cold, scared, and we're going to come out of this. And what I can tell you is that the one small town strategy that I've been promoting for 15 years now, since 2005, the one small town can change the world. Please go and watch the video. Whatever you do, the first thing you do after this, please go onto ubuntuplanet.org or onesmalltown.org. It's the same website. Go watch the most recent One Small Town video. It's 23 minutes long, so that you understand how easy and how simple it is. I believe, from the emails that I get from mayors and funders and people that are suddenly interested in the last 2 weeks, we are just entering a whole new era of making and manifesting our own reality through our higher levels of consciousness. And more people are now waking up to embrace a new reality, like a one small town, where we create abundance and prosperity for everyone, and literally coming out of the coronavirus crisis and creating a whole new reality for all of humanity.
Right. Now, Gordon Blues has asked, I have so many questions for this guy. Does Michael believe the Paluxy dinosaur footprints are real, i.e. did man coexist with dinosaurs?
Man coexisted with many other creatures, and we have evidence of it in my museum. So, man coexisted with dinosaurs, man coexisted with giants. The whole story of giants is much more real than anybody could imagine. If you don't believe in giants, that's fine. Believe what you want. You can believe the fairy tale modern history books, or you can believe the true stories and information that's been passed down for thousands of years in painstaking detail through oral tradition, so that we could remember and we would know what our history was. This is why this Eurocentric cabal, when they invaded the world 500 years ago to take over the world, this is why they made an absolutely relentless effort to remove the knowledge, to separate people from their ancestors, because when you separate people from their ancestors, they lose the ancestral knowledge, and we forget who we are. We become a species with amnesia, and you can burn books, you can destroy the written information, but you can never destroy oral knowledge and history passed down painstakingly and drummed into our heads through oral tradition. So the history that we are presented in our schools and universities, in our mainstream Eurocentric history books, is just a propaganda tool written by the media and the journalists that represented the past regimes. It's not real history.
Right. Now, I've got a question here. Does tellinger mean circles as astronomical? Gosek also in stories, but is old information. It was used for farming and timing.
Circles as in astronomical? I'm not sure what that question is.
Yeah, I'm just relating to what he says. I thought maybe it's something you could put together. Do you know Gosek?
The stone circles are very, very useful in farming, and they're also very useful in healing. Just off the track very quickly. Right. We have experienced over 12 years now repetitive, ongoing, unimaginable healing. People experience healing from benign stuff like a sore throat to a chest or kidney pain or whatever, or a sore back, to full-blown cancer that's being cured by people being exposed and spending time in the stone circles and at Adam's calendar. Again, I can go into the detail and the science and the physics behind it. I do that in my lectures, and when you come and visit me here, and we go there, and even in the fertility circle, we've already had success with people that couldn't fall pregnant for years and years and years. They come on one little visit, they go to the fertility circle, and next I get an email from them. Guess what? I'm pregnant. We've been trying for 6 years.
Oh, fantastic! Now, did South Africa have a large amount of people who farmed there, like Phoenicians?
No. There was never a large amount of people here. There were a large amount of slaves a long time ago that were working in the gold mines. I guess they were growing food as well, and on the terraces on the mines. So if that's your question, then I guess that's it, but it wouldn't be the Phoenicians. I'm talking about the ancient people. I'm talking about the very early humans after they were cloned to be slaves in the gold mines for the Anunnaki. They were then taught how to behave, how to walk, how to live, and how to grow food, and then they grew vast amounts of food. It's quite possible, and this is studying Anton Parks's work. Anton Parks is a relatively new face in the English world on Sumerian literature and Sumerian translations. He is unquestionably the #1 translator of Sumerian texts, the most knowledgeable person alive on that today. His collective knowledge of this is probably better than anyone else that's ever been before, and way beyond that. And Anton Parks tells us that there were various parts around the world where the Anunnaki were growing food, and they would then mass produce the food there and then distribute it to their gold mining colonies all over the world, because not all the colonies were conducive for growing food. So it seems that they were growing food in the Fertile Crescent up in Mesopotamia. They were growing food in other parts of the world like Mexico. They were growing a lot of food there. And then especially, unquestionably, the greatest example of unimaginable growing food, the largest remaining cluster of stone ruins, 450,000 square kilometers of agricultural terraces where they were growing food. So just imagine the amount of food they were growing here.
Wow. Now, Eben Rootman has asked, has anyone ever looked into the properties of monatomic gold?
Yes, many people have looked into that. I've had the privilege to meet with a guy that actually broke the monatomic gold to the world, David Hudson, in the early 80s. I spent quite a bit of time with him in Phoenix, and then I brought him to South Africa in 2011. He was one of my guest speakers at the UFO and Consciousness Conference in Johannesburg. And David is an amazing guy. He's a farmer in Phoenix, Arizona, and he accidentally discovered this monatomic gold thing. He actually gave it the name that is then sort of morphed and bastardized into ORMUS, but he originally coined the phrase orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, or ORMUS. And that was taken by the spiritual fraternity, and they use ORMUS as name for monatomic gold. Well, David Hudson was the guy that actually gave it that name. Orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, because gold is not the only monatomic element that you can find. Hydrogen is the primordial monatomic element. It's actually, this is why hydrogen is so important in all of creation, and I'm specifying the word creation. And once you take hydrogen as the primordial monatomic element or substance and you add oxygen to it, you know what happens. And we start getting some very interesting things in creation. And it's a spectacular story once you start connecting these dots. But to come back to the monatomic gold, David Hudson discovered this weird property, and then he spent about 2 years, possibly longer, with MIT in the MIT research labs researching this, and they actually extracted and purified this little pile of white powder, which they call the white powder of gold, or monatomic gold. It's called the white powder of gold because in its very pure form, it creates this white fluffy powder. Keep in mind that gold is a diatomic molecule, so it's Au2, aurum, Au2, because the one atom of gold binds to another atom of gold, so it creates a stable atom. If you prevent those atoms from binding to each other, that's when it's called monoatomic gold, single atom of gold. And if you keep that atom of gold in an inert environment where it doesn't bind with anything else, it stays in this white fluffy powder state. And David Hudson had some remarkable experiences with this stuff. It like levitates. You put your hand under it, it lifts up, and they had it in a tube of inert gas. And so it is non-reactive to anything, not electricity, not magnets, nothing. It responds to nothing except when he put his hand under it, it lifted and started to levitate. And then the most important thing for me, what they found, because that shows us the importance and why the Anunnaki were so obsessed with monoatomic gold, most likely, is because it seems to move between dimensions. When they exposed the monoatomic gold pile of powder to temperature, by the time it got to 700 degrees temperature, Celsius, the pile started to disappear. By 800 degrees, that little pile of white powder was gone. It had vanished. It wasn't there. So they had a little brush in this little tube, and they brushed the pan on which the white powder was standing, thinking that maybe it just became invisible. And so if it was invisible, then they would disturb it, and if it came back, they would see that the white powder was disturbed. And then they started to drop the temperature, and the pile of white powder started to reappear. And all of it came back and reappeared exactly as it was, not disturbed. What that tells us, that pile of white powder went somewhere else. It wasn't invisible. It went to another dimension that we did not have an effect on. This is probably the most important news about white powder of gold.
Okay, now Michelle Mullett has asked an associated question. She said, has anyone reproduced monatomic gold powder?
Well, many people claim they reproduce it, but it's difficult to know whether it's true or not. So it's very difficult to know. Some people have had a lot of success with their monoatomic gold, and a lot of I've had friends. We meet remarkable people. I've had friends. Hold on, I need to plug in my battery. My laptop is about to die.
Oh, we can't have that.
So free electricity. Here we come. Yes, many people have, make monoatomic gold. They sell it, and people claim they have amazing effects and results with it. So I'm not sure, but so I can't really make any claims for other people.
Right. Now, Gabrielle Segura Sanchez has asked, please ask about pyramids in South Africa.
Pyramids in South Africa, we have the two pyramids down below Adam's calendar. Those are the most obvious pyramids that I know of, and they're very active, very powerful pyramids. It's difficult to say how they were built. I suspect they were actually carved out of the bedrock, out of the original bedrock, and that's now badly eroded and covered in sand and soil, so it no longer looks like, it's not built out of blocks like the Pyramid of Giza or whatever. But they're very powerful. We've measured the energies as well. They scrambled, when you go there, it's completely scrambles your GPS signal. I mean, just like, you can't believe it, what it does. And it has a very strong effect, some sort of a connective effect that works in conjunction with Adam's calendar. Keep in mind, Adam's calendar is a very powerful machine, extremely powerful machine. It creates very much a torus. It is a giant toroidal field generator. And I suspect that it was a beam me up, Scotty, device, a teleportation device that the Anunnaki were using to basically teleport the gold from below the valley, from all the thousands of gold mines down in the valley below,
right,
bring it up to the edge of the mountain, and then from there send it to wherever the hell they were sending it to.
Yeah. Now, Gordon's asked, when he says money, does he mean fiat currency or fiat money? Because gold was essentially money for a long time.
Yeah, no, I've got to correct you there. You've got to just try and remove, just step away from any of these definitions. And unfortunately, we get so caught up in it. We got caught up in fiat money or gold-backed money. It doesn't really matter. It's money. It's a tool. It's a form of exchange that if you don't have this thing, then you can't get what you want. So it doesn't matter if it's fiat currency or gold-backed currency. It doesn't matter. The reason, and this is why it's such a frustrating subject, is because people come at this from an education that they get from within the financial industry and the financial institutions. So that is already imbued with the propaganda and the lies about money, how it's created, how it has to be controlled, otherwise it runs out of control and all this stuff. Those are all lies. So when you talk and you use the word money, you just need to know it is a tool to entrap people, whichever form or guise it comes in. So it doesn't matter whether it's gold. We don't need gold. The only reason we use gold is because the Anunnaki were here mining the gold, and they didn't use the gold for what we got to use it for. We inherited our obsession for gold from the Anunnaki. Okay, otherwise we probably wouldn't use gold. If we didn't use money, or if money wasn't inserted into humanity, we would not use gold or have a need for gold, probably, because we'd be using totally different technology, crystal technology, quartz technology, sound, energy technology, the technology that is embedded in the rocks and the quartz and the granite around us.
Right.
It is there. It's the highest forms of technology right around us. We just have forgotten how to use it. So if we want to talk about money and the global banking system, we should have a separate talk about this, because I really need to explain this to people. People are so trapped and we are so brainwashed by this thing called money that we forget that everything about it is a trap, right? So you got to completely extricate yourself out of any kind of thoughts you have on money.
Right. Now, okay, Raquel van Wyk asks, are Anunnaki a part of fallen angels?
The Anak and Anunnaki are possibly the same beings, and the answer to that would be most likely yes, possibly. But then you need to also define what angels are. It's a very interesting discussion, but I often say the same thing. I say that the Anakim or Anak or Anakim, the sons of Anak, are possibly referred to when they talk about the Anunnaki. That's why it sounds similar. And yes, many of them became the fallen angels. They became the ones that rebelled against their top hierarchical masters and became the troublemakers on Earth.
Okay. And N4V1 asks, what was found at Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun and Crimean Pyramid at Sevastopol?
Bosnian Pyramid is a really amazing place. It is also it's probably the largest pyramid and probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest pyramid on Earth. Sam Osmanagic is a very good friend of mine. I see him often. We do tours together. And Sam is a very learned individual. He probably knows more about pyramids than anybody else on Earth. And he found, for example, that the tip of the pyramid emits a beam, 28 kilohertz. 28 kilohertz sound frequency beam. It's been measured many times now. And the interesting thing is that the further away it goes, the stronger it gets.
Wow.
Stronger the effect gets, the signal gets. Yeah. So it is a Cesar technology beam, and we don't have time to go into it now.
Sure. Yeah, we got a bunch of questions still to go through here. Yeah. Stuart Campbell asks.
But hold on.
Yeah, carry on.
The other thing are the tunnels. The tunnels that are some like 1.5 kilometers away from the pyramid that all move towards the pyramid, and that is a very clear indication that what Sam discovered there is the source of the energy, the thing that drives the pyramid. So that pyramid is driven by the tunnels that were then filled. They were backfilled, and this is why Sam is excavating the tunnels, and the rubble just falls down until they get to the solid tunnel, and then they stop. But they're basically taking out the backfill that filled these tunnels. So whoever did this was seriously determined to fill hundreds of kilometers of underground tunnels that lead they're literally like the alveoli and the bronchi and the bronchi in your lungs, and they all move towards the pyramid. And at the pyramid, there's a spiral, seems to be a spiral tunnel or a passage or a tube, something that goes up towards the top. Wow. So it seems to me that the Bosnian pyramid generates energy the same way that our lungs generate energy. As we breathe, the air that moves through the passages of the bronchus, the bronchi, the alveoli, by the time the air gets to your alveoli, it's moving. The sound of the air, keep in mind that when you breathe, it makes a sound. So as you breathe in, air goes smaller passages, and the sound it makes is moving basically close to the speed of light. So it's highly energized sound, and that sound that then reaches your lungs from the air you breathe is what actually energizes the oxygen in the blood. And This is another discussion that we can have. So this is they didn't teach me this in medical school.
Stuart Campbell asks.
So the Bosnian pyramid works on the same way.
Yeah.
All these tunnels that lead have air moving through it, and as that air moves through those tunnels, it gives off a frequency, and that frequency activates the pyramid to perform a specific function, whatever that is. And it seems to be a healing function. Just like I've experienced healing in the stone circles, Samas Managic has experienced even more miraculous and unbelievable healing in the tunnels, at the Ravne tunnels at the Bosnian pyramid.
Wow, okay. Stuart Campbell asks, how would this ancient civilization get wind of God's plan to flood the world and bury their gold beforehand?
Well, this wasn't the people. This was the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were the guys that came here, and they were very advanced beings. They travel between dimensions. They have this advanced Caesar technology. These guys levitation technology around the world in seconds. So they knew everything. They were the guys that probably caused the flood. They may have caused the flood themselves.
Right.
It's quite possible. I'm not saying they did, but it's possible that they actually caused the flood themselves, or they knew it was coming because they're much smarter and they figured out there was something wrong.
Now, X Factor's got a very interesting question for you. I've heard about this Piri-Reis map. He says, ask him about the Piri-Reis map, please. And how the heck was that drawn?
They were very advanced civilizations. They could cover the world. Anunnaki covered the world. They didn't need maps. They used very different technologies. So the Piri-Reis map is interesting, but that's already far more recent. And when we lost that advanced technology of flight, of levitation, of toroidal fields and Caesar beams and Caesar technology, so the Piri-Reis maps are probably connected to a much more recent period. I guess we don't really know exactly when they come from, but it's a very different time in human history. I suspect the Piri-Reis maps.
Do you want to tell people what is so special about the Piri-Reis map?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the Piri-Reis map. I read about it a long time ago.
Okay.
And I forgot the reasons why it was so special. It interested me for a while, but there's so much more interesting stuff. So I've sort of lost it.
Well, I'm a bit of a cartographer, so I know a bit about this. What makes a Piri-Reis map so special is that it's like looking down at the Earth. It is the detail of Europe and Africa and stuff like that. It's like someone flew over, and this is before people had actually been to certain parts. It's like someone actually took a photograph and then put it onto a map but they would have to be above the Earth to do it. That's what makes that map so extraordinary. Now, Tace Lawrence asks...
I recall something like that, yeah.
Tace Lawrence asks, I have a personal question for Michael. We've done the evolution one. I think... Okay, Tace asks, does Michael know about Ron Wyatt?
Ron Wyatt, the name rings a bell. What's he known for?
I don't know. That's all he says.
Ron Wyatt. The name rings a very loud bell, but I just can't remember why I would know that name. Ron Wyatt.
Okay. David Lipnicki says, are you an evolutionist? Well, we've covered that, haven't we? You're a creationist.
No, everything is created. Everything comes into creation through consciousness.
Yeah.
Even Max Planck. This is probably Max Planck's greatest contribution to quantum mechanics and the world of science and physics. Max Planck made it very clear in his teachings, but this was obviously not taught, and they didn't want to spread this because they would undermine the lies that they would then sell us down the road. He says that everything comes from consciousness. All the quantum leap and all the stuff that he created and Planck's constant and everything he discovered in the quantum field, the electrons and blah, blah, all the stuff that he's just so brilliantly shared with us. He talks very, very passionately about the consciousness, that nothing gets behind consciousness, that consciousness is the primordial source of everything, and everything comes from consciousness. So, and I'm of that belief as well, because it comes from sound resonance, and sound and resonance is something that creates everything. And once you've studied cymatics and you understand the manifestation of sound into physical form, it becomes clear. Our DNA is a manifestation, and it's in essence, it's a toroidal field. Our DNA creates a perfect toroidal field. Everything is a consequence of sound and resonance, not evolution. The evolution, you get adaptations within species, and you get adaptations within something, but it has to have a primordial something. It has to be something before it can adapt and have subtle adaptations within the conditions that it finds itself in. That I don't have a problem with, but to evolve, for humanity to have evolved out of primordial cell. This is where I teach, if you go to some of my lectures, I teach the insanity of particle physics, the whole particle physics agenda that was injected into mainstream education and physics and science, where they tell us that everything is a random accident, a cosmic accident of infinite number of particles randomly bumping into each other and then creating everything in creation that we know. And are you serious? It even creates the thoughts that I have and the consciousness that I have to be able to have the discussion and talk to you. So it is just an insane idea. In fact, Chandra Wickramancinga, and I think Chandra Wickramancinga is a famous physicist or scientist, astrophysicist, mathematician, I forget exactly. I think he's at Oxford or Cambridge, one of those two. He's world famous. He's won Nobel Prizes and all that stuff. And Chandra Wickramancinga actually wrote that the probability of life forming spontaneously out of random particles bumping into each other is 10 to the 40,000.
In other words, impossible.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyone that still talks about evolution has just unfortunately swallowed the red pill and they've gone down the wrong rabbit hole, or the blue pill, sorry, or forget which one it is now. They've gone down the wrong rabbit hole, and they've been sucked up into mainstream education and the whole Darwin. That was another agenda that was shoved in our throats. You know, the whole Darwin era. That's when we got the separation of education and the true knowledge and information. And Darwin might have been a good guy. He might have discovered some stuff, but unfortunately, none of that holds any water in a scientific debate where people actually drop assumptions and talk about real science.
Right. Now, we're sitting at 10:30, nearly 10:30 p.m. your time, Michael, so I need your guidance. Are you happy to keep talking for a little while? Because we've got about 10 questions to go.
I'm happy to do 10 questions, but then I'm going to have to kick out of here because I'm absolutely exhausted. I've been at it since
totally
4 o'clock
get
this
it.
morning. So
That's why I asked the
8 o'clock
question.
I'm normally in bed. You know?
Okay, Joanne Slater has asked, why do you think they now want the mark of the beast, and what do you believe will happen?
No, that's not going to happen. The light will win. The good side wins.
But what about
we
this
have
little thing that they're going to insert into your hand, like the little chip?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to get there. They want to do that, but I believe that we're not going to get there. But at the same time, you know, let me tell you this. We are the makers of our own reality. You know, in the book of Revelations in the Bible, it says there were two men in the field and suddenly one was gone. And I believe that indicates a separation of consciousness, where we get divided into our own realities based on the level of consciousness that you are in. So if you're constantly worried about a world with a mark of the beast and chips in your hands and a barcode on your forehead and you're totally controlled and manipulated, then that is the reality you're going to end up in. If you imagine and manifest every day and think about a beautiful world free of draconian rule, free of chemtrails, free of the toxins, beautiful world where people live in villages and small towns, away from the overgrown cities, in abundance and prosperity, growing and in unimaginable amount of holistic food with technology that is simple but far more advanced than the technology we have today. Imagine that kind of world of absolute peace, prosperity, and abundance, and then that is the reality that you will find yourself in when we do get a separation of consciousness, as the book of Revelations suggests.
Okay, now I've got 3 questions here from Dalen. She says, do you believe in the hollow earth theory? Also, do you think we are a species with amnesia? And also, what is your opinion on Robert Sefer?
Robert Sefer, I like Robert a lot. He's doing some wonderful research. He's slightly more mainstream. He goes to the edge quite a bit, but I like Robert's work a lot. I respect him, and he's sharing a lot of critical information with people. So you can certainly read his material and learn from that. And then what was the other question?
Do you believe in the hollow earth theory?
Hollow earth, yes and no. It's a trick question. First, you have to determine what earth is. And we discussed that already. I don't really want to go there. But if I tell you, study toroidal fields, as above, so below, is an explanation for what people think the hollow earth is. As above, so below. You'll find the answers in a toroidal field. Toroidal fields have an accretion disk at the center of them. And when you get to the other side, it looks just like the side that you've come from. And you might think that you are inside a hollow disk when there's a sun and there's everything that looks like everything else on your side. So the toroidal structure and the toroidal nature of reality can explain even that. The hollow earth can be explained with a toroidal nature of reality, which is the fundamental structure of everything in creation. If anybody argues with that, that means they have not done enough homework, or they've been sucked up by the particle physics crap.
And now, Michelle Mullard has asked, in regards to the catastrophic cataclysm on Earth, why has no one referenced the Fredefort Dome impact crater as a possibility?
Of what possibility of?
The Fredefort Dome impact crater.
Yes, I know the Freerford, but a possibility of what?
A possibility of a catastrophic cataclysm on Earth.
Well, it was. The Freerford impact crater must have been a spectacular cataclysm. But, that's so far back, we can't imagine what the world looked like or what was here. But at the same time, it's possible that the world, as we know it, is actually endless. It goes back forever. That there is no actual beginning to the Earth, what we think the origins of Earth.
Right.
These are very profound and questions that need a lot more discussion and thought. We think that the Earth was created because we believe the scientists that come up with a theory, the Big Bang theory, and then that stick, and now suddenly it's a fact. Everybody believes in the Big Bang theory. They just removed the word theory and now it's a fact. No, sorry, everybody that studies this realizes it's just a joke. So there is no evidence that the Earth is 13 billion years old. They think they have evidence, but it's some indication of something, but it's or whatever the age of the Earth is that they claim it is. The universe is 13 billion years old.
Right.
So it's possible when you start studying the nature of reality, the toroidal fields, you start looking at the Earth and the cosmos around us with very different eyes, it's quite possible that the Earth is infinitely old and that there's just been stuff going on here for ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
That it was part of the original creation.
Now, John Smith has asked, has Michael ever been threatened? I guess physically threatened.
Actually, yes. Not threatened. I was given a warning a long time ago by some CIA guys to leave the money thing alone. Talk about the aliens and talk about the ancient civilizations, but leave the money thing alone, I was told.
Okay. Now, Gordon Blues has asked, going back to Ed Leedskalinen, was he using sound with his cones or electromagnetism?
No, he was using sound. The cones work with sound, not with electromagnetism. Sound creates electromagnetism. So everything comes from sound. Keep in mind, sound first. That's why it says, God said, let there be light. The sound creates light, and light is an electromagnetic phenomenon, so we know that. So sound creates magnetic fields, and moving magnetic fields create electromagnetic fields. So there's your process of creation.
Yeah, we've got four final questions to go.
Sound. Definitely sound.
We've got four final questions to go. Paddy has asked, please ask Michael if he is talking about the Rephaim.
Rephaim, Rephaim, the Gibborim, the Zamzumim, the Emim, the Rephaim, the Anakim, the Elohim, all of these creatures and the entities in the Bible, in the rabbinical Bible, and they were all weird creatures of different shapes and sizes, from very small ones to the very large ones. Like in the book of Enoch, we are told that the large giants were 3,000 ells tall. 3,000 ells. 1 ell is half a meter. That makes it 1.5 kilometers tall. That's how big the giants were. Yeah.
Okay, David Lipnicki has asked, how much sound is needed for levitation to occur?
Not much. Once you've turned the sound into a Caesar beam, that Caesar beam creates the electromagnetic field around it, the magnetic field around it, that causes the levitation, because you trap the object you want to levitate. You actually trap that in the magnetic field between two Caesar beams. That's how Ed Leedskalnin was levitating things with two cone-shaped tools. So you can't levitate things with one cone-shaped tool. You need two cone-shaped tools to levitate stuff with, because the Caesar beam that comes out the front, the invisible Caesar beam, that creates the very powerful magnetic field.
Okay.
So that's how you use. Yeah, that's how it's used.
Okay, we got one final question for you, and thank you so much for taking all these questions. I know there's been a big bunch. Cookpot asks, please ask Michael what is his study fields and does he have university degrees?
Yes, I think I mentioned right up front, I graduated from Wits Medical School with a degree in pharmaceutics, and that's a 5-year degree. It's not a 3-year degree, so I should have a doctorate for that.
Right. Okay.
And I worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing as well. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, that's a wrap for tonight's live stream. Michael, before I just thank the moderators and people who've joined us, is there a message that you have for people who watch this video now or who will be watch it later?
Yes, a very important message.
Go ahead.
We are at a very important point in human history where we either destroy ourselves or we create a beautiful world of abundance and prosperity for everyone. I have shared that model with the world called One Small Town. Please go and look at the video, study it. If it resonates with you, once you see it and you realize how simple it is and how easily we can transition and change this world into a beautiful place of abundance for every single one of us, then go out there and do something. Become a seed of consciousness and spread that video and that message with everyone you know. Because if you don't, then you're denying others the message of hope and some light at the end of this dark and gloomy tunnel. Because at this moment, quite frankly, I have not seen any other message that gives us a very bright light of hope at the end of this dark and gloomy tunnel for humanity. Please share the One Small Town message with everyone you know, and let's manifest that beautiful reality for all of us.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, I think like me, you've been absolutely blown away with the amount of knowledge that Michael's got, and I just want to thank our moderators for looking after the side chat, and for those who've participated in the side chat, thanks for the hundreds of people who are watching right now, and those who watch later. Look, I always find Michael a extremely fascinating person to talk to. I mean, he is absolutely on the money with so many things, and I just love your knowledge. I mean, you just explode with knowledge, Michael, and I want to thank you for spending the last 2.5 hours with us and telling us about things that we have never heard about before. All right.
Well, I hope I didn't freak you out too much. Go out there, do your research, understand that we're mere babies in the big field of knowledge, and we're just waking up from a long, dark sleep.
Yeah.
We're suddenly waking up to the truth and the reality around us. So thank you for this. Thank you for everyone watching, and let's make this world a better place.
Fantastic. All right, with that, I'm going to sign off. Please, everybody, take care, and I look forward to sometime in the future to having you back on, Michael.